Private Harris W. Steele stepped ashore on the black volcanic sand beach of Iwo Jima on February 25, 1945. The 19-year-old from Brunswick, Georgia, with brown hair and gray eyes, was one of 71,300 Marines invading the island just 700 miles from Japan. 6,820 Americans perished there. They fell on the beach, ascending Mount Suribachi and crossing hellish island terrain strewn with landmarks like the amphitheater and Turkey Knob. Today, those nightmarish places are fading from memory as the last of the aging veterans pass away. Harris Steele came ashore on D+6, the sixth day after D-Day, one of 215 replacements assigned to the 1st Battalion, 25th Marines, 4th Marine Division. The battalion desperately needed the reinforcements because it had suffered fearful casualties, including the death of its commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Hollis Mustaine. On D-Day, Mustaine led his Marines ashore at Blue 1, a beach on the right flank. Over the next 3 days, his battalion advanced slowly against fanatical opposition from well-concealed Japanese defenders in the cliffs and pinnacles of a rock quarry honeycombed with strongpoints. Then the battalion pulled back to rest, reorganize, and receive those replacements. Harris Steele was one of them. On Steele's first night ashore, he endured large mortar and artillery barrages. Already he had seen the wreckage of landing craft, equipment strewn across the beach, broken tanks and artillery guns, wounded and dead Marines. He heard the clamor of gunfire and heavy weapons and listened to harrowing accounts of combat passed down by the battalion's veterans. 9 months earlier, Steele and his classmates of the Glenn Academy class of 1944 had gathered at the school gym for a commencement dance. He was captain of the basketball team, member of the G Club and handbook committee, and his peers had named him the most athletic male. When the festivities concluded that evening, the graduates gathered around a piano to sing Auld Lang Syne. "How sad most of the seniors look," one girl noted, "for they have to go out in life and be scattered to the ends of the earth." Steele indeed arrived at the ends of the earth when he came ashore on Iwo Jima. His battalion moved forward on D+7 to replace another on the front line near the amphitheater in Turkey Knob, terrain features collectively known as the Meat Grinder. In fierce combat over the next 5 days, the 1st Battalion advanced just 50 yards, sustaining 296 casualties, fully 36% of its strength. D+9 was especially bad. At 8:15 that morning, Harris and 201 of his comrades in A Company moved another 50 yards through woods north of Turkey Knob, facing stiff resistance as the enemy laid a heavy mortar and rocket barrage and voluminous machine gun fire from the high ground 100 yards to the front and from the left flank. Things became so desperate that A Company called for reinforcements. "The line in the woods had to be held at all cost," a Marine recalled. "Tanks fired 85 rounds at the blockhouse at Turkey Knob, but failed to silence it. Realizing the position was untenable, the battalion pulled back to the previous night's position under cover of heavy smoke." At sunrise, A Company counted just 85 officers and men, having sustained 117 casualties, a catastrophic 58% in just 1 day. After 2 more days of fighting, the tattered battalion again pulled back to a quieter sector and regrouped. A Company drew 82 replacements, mostly untested in battle. These fresh troops outnumbered the veterans. In comparison, Harris Steele, who had been ashore 6 days, was a begrimed, battle-weary veteran. To learn more about Harris, I spoke with several of his high school classmates between 2010 and 2014. The first was Carol Martin, who was 2 years behind him in high school. Martin recalled that Harris played center for the Glenn Academy football team and stood out in basketball. He said, quote, "I really thought he was a heck of a basketball player. He was my kind of idol In basketball, we thought a lot of him. Albert Schielander remembered Steele as a fine young man. We certainly liked him. Olaf Buddy Olson concurred. I liked Harris, he told me. He spoke his piece. He was easy to get along with. Everybody loved him. Olson started to tell how Harris had once gotten in trouble for throwing a book at a teacher at Glenn Academy who had called him a name. This seemed particularly interesting, but Olson stopped, reluctant, even after 70 years, to discuss a personal matter. Nevertheless, it seemed that Olson's sympathies were with Harris. Each classmate mentioned Harris's peculiar nickname, Moron. None could recall the reason for the moniker, but each was adamant that it was bestowed with affection rather than ridicule. Carol Martin said the nickname was given by Skeeter Nutt, Steele's cousin and fellow offensive lineman on the football team. As Harris trotted to the rear on D+12, something surprising happened. He bumped into a Glenn Academy classmate, Wilbert Taylor. Following high school graduation, the two had traveled from Brunswick to Atlanta to join the Marine Corps. They were together at boot camp on Parris Island, for training at Camp Lejeune, more training in Hawaii, and then in late January 1945, the long voyage to the Western Pacific. In a 2010 telephone interview, Wilbert Taylor remembered that Harris got seasick mighty quick as the invasion fleet approached Iwo Jima. Wilbert remembered that Harris was lovesick for his girl back home. When the invasion fleet reached Iwo Jima, the Brunswick buddies remained aboard the USS Napa for a week until Harris came ashore on D+6 to join the 25th Marines. A few days later, Wilbert Taylor came ashore on a landing craft filled with fresh troops and barbed wire. He was assigned to the 24th Marines. On his first day ashore, Taylor heard a wounded Marine calling for a corpsman. I got up, after he called a time or two, and didn't see him, Taylor said. I went out there, saw somebody, and squatted down. Just then a bullet grazed Taylor's finger, shattering the stock of his rifle. Unhurt but shaken, he said, "That sniper nearly put it to me." Taylor and Steele unexpectedly bumped into one another a few days later as Taylor's battalion prepared to move forward. Harris was running back with his group, and I was standing there waiting to go back up to the front line with mine, Taylor said. I saw him and hollered at him. He stopped, and we had a small talk. That was the last time they saw each other, because the next day Taylor was hit by shrapnel in his neck. He was evacuated to Guam and then to Hawaii. The doctors left the metal in his body. I kept it in there until I got home, he said. Finally, it started to work out, and Daddy pulled it out. While Harris and his battalion rested on Iwo Jima, he cleaned his weapons, and the officers reorganized the rifle companies, distributing the men evenly. Then, on D+14, they moved forward to replace another battalion on the line. They were in the exact place they had been 2 days before. No progress had been made. The meat grinder was still grinding. Under fire from Japanese mortars and artillery, the battalion called on reinforcements. Throughout the day, tanks were employed to fire into the blockhouse in the rear of Turkey Knob, an officer reported. The tanks did the trick. At last, the lethal enemy strongpoint was silenced. The next day, A Company, 1st Battalion, 25th Marines, moved out at 8 a.m., advancing 125 yards. The Marines faced heavy resistance from machine guns, small arms, and mortars. Then, after sundown, they endured frequent clashes with enemy patrols using hand grenades and small arms fire. While A Company advanced that day, or perhaps during the nighttime fighting, Harris Steele was killed in action, suffering a fatal, quote, wound, fragment, shell, back, close quote. Harris died 15 years before I was born, but my great-aunt told me about him. Harris was her husband's nephew. During childhood visits with Aunt Wheezy at her small tin-roofed house on a dirt road beside Brunswick's sprawling Palmetto Cemetery, she gave an abbreviated account that went something like this. Harris graduated from Glenn Academy, joined the Marines, and was shot in the head when he came ashore on Iwo Jima. I was mesmerized by World War II stories, so her story got my full attention. I incorrectly pictured Harris plunging into the surf on D-Day, storming the beach, and immediately falling to enemy gunfire. It wasn't until I began working on this story that I learned this was inaccurate. On April 3, 1945, Harris's sister, Mary Ellen, received this telegram. Deeply regret to inform you that your brother, Private Harris W. Steele, U.S. MCR, was killed in action 6 March 1945 at Iwo Jima, Volcano Island. Harris's high school friend Joyce Davis Shelander said that his classmates felt that he was ours, and we lost him. He was the first casualty from our class. Carol Martin added that Harris was the reason that 4 of us went into the Marine Corps as soon as we graduated. His death tore all of us up. We wanted to kill Japs for killing him. Brunswick, Georgia is 7,662 miles from the Volcano Islands, and Harris's family had the sad task of receiving his personal effects, including 1 pair of slippers and holder, 58 cents, 1 New Testament, 1 greeting card, a Purple Heart, and 2 other medals. His mother applied for his back pay and life insurance benefits. Then, in 1947, she applied for the return of his remains from the 4th Division Cemetery on Iwo Jima. He finally arrived home on March 22, 1948. I first happened on Harris's grave while taking a Thanksgiving stroll in Palmetto Cemetery about 23 years ago. A gentle breeze tumbled colorful late autumn leaves across the granite slab marker, stilled by a melancholy awareness that he never had a chance to marry, to thrill at the birth of a daughter, and to teach a son to throw a baseball. I decided to tell his story. It is found in the spring 2015 issue of Georgia Backroads. He was ours, and we lost him, marking the 70th anniversary of the smoking bedlam of Iwo Jima. If you enjoy history like this, please click to subscribe to this YouTube channel. For more information about Harris Steele, you can order the spring 2015 issue at www.georgiabackroads.com. Thank you for watching.